Kristi. Welcome on to our first installment in our Sevens series, where we're taking an in-depth look at the game of Sevens, which is obviously the code, which is your specialty of the game. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So the way it's going to work is we have 4 weeks, and we're going to break the game right down, starting from an introduction, everything from the rules, the dimensions, the positional and demand differences between the game and a 15s code and a 7s code. And obviously, Kristi will get a chance to talk about your experiences throughout the process, which is going to be really cool. Awesome. And then obviously, Kristi, it's awesome to kind of have you aboard with the Free Jacks organization here in our mission to refine the pathways to the professional game and sort of make it easier for people to A, find the game, and B, progress up the ranks, whether it's in 7s or 15s. We just love the opportunity to get people to play the game.
Yeah, I'm excited to be part of it. I think growing the game is a huge responsibility for us that play it, and I'm excited to be part of it.
Awesome. Sweet. So our first slide here, we're going to be talking about the field dimensions. And Kristi, you started with soccer. How did the dimensions of the field kind of vary to a soccer field? What are the key differences?
They're actually not that different. I mean, a rugby field is pretty similar to like an American football field. And I think for a soccer field, it's just 120 yards usually, as opposed to 100. But otherwise, I mean, besides the line differences, like field size, it really doesn't feel that different. I'd say the biggest difference is the number of people on it, and that's when you really feel the space differently. But field dimension wise, it's not that different to soccer or American football.
Yeah, that's dead right. And you see it, don't you, when you travel around and you see rugby being played in America? Often it's being played on an American football field.
Yes. Yeah.
Aren't the most forgiving surfaces, but are certainly pretty similar in terms of size. So some of the key lines here, Kristi, I'm going to ask you about. The first one is that middle line there, the 50-meter line. What is the story with that line? What can you tell us about that?
It's the most important line for kickoffs. So after to start the game, or after a try is scored, the teams will kick off from that line. Kickoff in sevens has to go past that 10-meter line. And that's the basic importance of 50-meter.
Awesome. So those dotted lines, we've got the 10-meter line, the 5-meter line, and the 15-meter line. So those are just important markings because of, like Kristi mentioned, the fact that the ball has got to go 10 meters off a restart. And can you tell us anything about that 5-meter line, Kristi? Just that the ball has got to go off a line out. It's got to go over that 5-meter line. That's the only thing really, isn't it, with the 5-meter?
I was going to say 5-meter and kickoffs is not that important. I was just thinking kickoffs. So.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. And then the try line, or how we like to call it, the end zone in American football. What's the story with that kind of that end goal area there?
So to score in rugby, you just have to make it over that line, and you have to, as opposed to American football where all you have to do is cross the plane or into that zone. In rugby, you actually have to put the ball down with downward pressure in order for it to count as a try. And also opposed to American football, a try in rugby is worth 5 points instead of 6 in football. So, but yeah, the key difference being that you actually have to place the ball down in the try zone in order for it to count.
Brilliant. Cool. So now everyone should have a relatively okay understanding of kind of the dimensions of the field and what all these weird lines mean, because I know it can be quite daunting at the beginning, but hopefully we've broken those down. The last one we need to go over probably, Kristi, is the 22-meter line there. Let's just touch on that quickly before we move on.
After you.
Yeah. So if the ball, if you are to touch the ball down in your own try zone, essentially, if you haven't taken it back from the field of play into the dead ball zone, the try zone, you can place it down, and then it'll be a 22 dropout, which all that means is that there'll be a restart at that 22-meter line. So that's the only other thing about which you don't actually see that much in sevens, do you, Kristi?
No, you really don't. I think I've seen it maybe once in all my series stops. So,
Nice. And that's how many series stops have you been on in your career now with the States?
so I've played 9. I played in 9 World Series stops so far.
And what's been your favorite stop so far?
I think Cape Town was the coolest stop. Definitely a place in the world that I, honestly never thought I'd go. And also rugby is such a big thing there that just like feeling that energy in the stadium and like the number of people that come out to watch rugby was just a really cool experience to have.
Awesome. Yeah, I imagine I just saw a photo on one of my social feeds today of Cape Town from like a drone, and it's beachy, it's hot, like
Oh,
it's
it's
beautiful,
beautiful.
isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. And
Yeah.
I like, a Sevens stadium, they sell it and market it around kind of the party atmosphere, and I imagine there's no better place to have that atmosphere than Cape Town.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's also really cool to get to play in front of fans that know the game. It's just like it's a special experience that you don't get everywhere we play because people just know the game so well in South Africa that it's really cool to get to play in front of that.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. So we'll move on to our key law variations from the 15s version of the game, which obviously the Free Jacks partake in with Major League Rugby, and then the sevens version of the game. So as stated at the top there are several variations in laws which apply to rugby sevens, primarily to A, speed up the game, and to B, account for the reduced number of players. And I know, Kristi, when I went back to New Zealand, I thought I'd try my luck and jump into a sevens tournament with a club team back home that was short. And wow, it is hugely taxing, isn't it? We played 4 games, and the last game I pulled my hamstring, but I was just nowhere near conditioned to that sort of, I guess, stress on the body.
Yeah, no, you really feel it, especially, when you think of a 15s game, you have 30 people on that field. And then a sevens game, you have 14 total on the same size field, and you just really feel the amount of space that the 7 of you on your team have to cover. It's definitely incredibly taxing and something you definitely have to train for, I'd say.
Yeah, and that probably in itself, the first point here is 7 players per team on the field instead of 15, as you were referencing.
Yeah.
That in itself probably shapes the body type of a sevens player a little bit differently to a 15s player. What do you think, just visually looking at a sevens player versus a 15s player, is the biggest difference?
I think you just see a little bit less variety in sevens players. I think every player on the field has to be a little bit more dynamic maybe than is demanded in 15s, just because there's more running that everyone has to do. So I think that kind of accounts for the biggest difference is just, everyone has to have a high standard of conditioning, and everyone has to be a little bit more dynamic in their abilities to run.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no front row forwards out there
Yeah.
on the sevens field. Well, not at the level you play at least, anyway.
Right.
Cool. And so 7-minute halves. So everything works in sevens instead of 40-minute halves. Obviously, a much shorter format of the game, and a maximum of 2-minute half time instead of 10 minutes. And when I think of half time, I think of the wee huddle. Obviously, we at the Free Jacks, we go back into the changing room for about 10 minutes. Everyone goes to the bathroom, has a cup of water, does everything they want to do. There's no time for that in sevens, is there?
No, absolutely not. We usually have time to basically, we huddle as a team. We take a few seconds to kind of like catch our breaths, just kind of like calm our breathing down. And then we have like maybe at that point 30 seconds of coach instruction before we kind of have to take the field again and get back out there. So, you get a sip of water, you catch your breath, and then you're kind of right back into it.
Nice. And I think that's the thing that is so appealing about sevens in America is the fact that it's such an easy game to pick up with, the duration's only 14 minutes. You can play multiple in a day or multiple in a weekend. It's a really easy way for people to find the game, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really fun too. I think people are attracted to how fast it is. And yeah, getting to play multiple games in a day instead of just, one over. I think it's good for the American attention span too, which I think is exciting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And so all conversion attempts must be in 15s. We can kick off a tee for a conversion, and that means to kick the ball up over the post, like the extra point in football after a touchdown. But instead, you've got to drop kick it in sevens. Now, you haven't been playing that long, Kristi. So, what is your drop kick looking like at the moment? Have you been working on that?
It's one of my summer tasks. I'll say that. With a soccer background, it's something that I think they definitely want me to learn how to do, and something I definitely want to learn how to do. But the drop is the hardest part. I can do the kicking motion, but really learning that drop, understanding it so you're dropping it consistently and you can really get good contact with the ball is definitely a skill and definitely something that takes time to learn. So I'd say my drop kick is getting there, but it's definitely not there yet.
Nice. That's awesome. And so conversions must be taken within 30 seconds of scoring a try instead of 90 seconds, which we've got in 15s, which again lends itself to the game being sped up.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
3-player scrums instead of 8 players. So I know that you're typically on we'll get to positions in a second, but you're typically centre wing. So you'll be the one looking in at the scrum. But
Mm-hmm.
what can you tell us from just looking at visually, what does that scrum look like in sevens?
Well, so obviously, I mean, a scrum in sevens is a lot smaller than a scrum in 15s. It's also, they're a lot quicker. Usually the contest only lasts a few seconds. So it's really more just about, in sevens, it's really just more about kind of holding your position instead of pushing as you might in a 15 scrum. It's really just about kind of holding the position for enough time to get the ball out cleanly, as opposed to kind of um, the big scrums in 15s where you're really there's a lot more like vying against each other to try to get possession of that ball.
Yeah, really well summarized. It seems to me, Kristi, that there isn't as much focus on trying to turn that ball over as well. Would that be fair to say? Like, how often do you see a turnover at scrum time in seven?
It definitely happens. Like I know we have a few people who have some pretty long legs, so they're pretty good at getting their feet in there to try to steal it when we're defending.
Nice.
But in general, I think they happen so fast that your chance for contesting that ball is, if you don't get it kind of right away, you're not going to get it. So I think a bigger concern of ours is just making sure, instead of necessarily that hooker being able to compete, is that hooker getting out of the scrum quickly so that they can get in the defensive line, because chances are they're going to get the ball out cleanly, and so we have to be ready to defend across the rest of the field.
Yeah, brilliant. And I'm sure some of them in there too, they're thinking as soon as this ball's out, I've got to defend or I've got to attack. They don't really want to be in there too long, do they?
No.
Cool. And then you touched on this earlier offline, but kickoffs in sevens, the team which has just scored kicks off rather than the conceding team, as in the 15s code. Tell us a little bit about your view on kickoffs in sevens.
So kickoffs are a massive, possession battle in sevens. I think much more so than they are in 15s, because obviously, so in sevens, because you have less people on the field, and the kickoffs are a lot more contestable, especially if you have great kickers who are putting the ball like at 10 meters. So kickoffs are one of the big things we focus on. We really highlight that we have 3 sets of restarts. It's, our lineouts, our scrums, and our kickoffs. And so obviously also it's huge because sevens go so quickly. Possession is really important. So if you score and you can get that ball back, you're just suffocating the other team of possession, and that's really it's also a lot easier physically to play attack than it is defense. So those are all really important things towards like winning a sevens game. So we have dedicated people on our team. Usually they are forwards, but some of them actually are wings, whose job it is on kickoffs to be contesting that ball and to, if they're not going to win it, be right there to put pressure on the other team, hopefully to cause a turnover early so that we can get the ball back. So I just think a lot more in sevens, it's a lot more of a contestable play than it is in 15s, where usually, you're catching the ball, you're surrounded by a bunch of people on your team, you're a little bit safer in that situation than in sevens, when it's really a lot of one-on-one competitions for that ball.
Nice. Yeah, incredibly well summarized. And are you able to, in 15s, obviously you see teams receiving and you're able to lift the player that's receiving the ball. Are you able to do that in sevens?
Yeah, the receiving team can throw a pot up if they want, if that's a way that they can kind of try to secure their possession in the same way that you can in 15s.
Nice. Awesome. Really well explained. So even my understanding of the game of sevens has been incredibly well revamped there. So cheers for that, Kristi. The
Yeah,
last
happy.
one is that yellow cards net a 2-minute suspension. Sometimes in sevens you do see the ball get slapped down and quick yellow cards, or someone deliberately slowing the breakdown down and yellow cards. They're probably a more common occurrence in sevens than 15s, aren't they?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I think the intentional knock is a big one, and it's one that they're really emphasizing nowadays. Also, yeah, as you said, just like different ways of slowing the breakdown down. They're really like cracking down on stuff like that. And also high tackles. I think you see a lot of high tackles just because people are kind of reaching for anything to try to kind of make that tackle. So that's another big violation that people get carded for.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. And so moving into positions, obviously it's a little bit easier to understand the positions in sevens than it is 15s, hence because there's only half as many. But tell us, Kristi, which ones are the forwards in this picture here?
So your forwards are going to be the 1, 2, 3 in this picture. So the two props and the hooker. So when I was actually making notes, I put forwards in quotation marks because, yes, they are considered forwards because they are the people that are in charge of the scrums and the lineouts. And as I said, often the people who are also contesting the kickoffs. But in 15s, you're only a forward for a few seconds of the game, and the rest of the time you're just another player on the field. So I think it's a lot more dynamic of a position than being part of the forward pack in 15s. So yeah, so those are your forwards.
And that probably rings really true to if you see forwards and sevens cross over to playing 15s. Typically, from what I've seen, they're often centers or even like tall wingers, aren't they?
Right. Yeah. So I'd say forwards kind of loosely because it's part of their job to take care of the restarts, but at the same time, the second that restarts over, which is often a few seconds, they're out on the field, and so they often act as another set of fly half center wing essentially on the field. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And then scrum half, so the scrum half is consistent with the code of 15s. Is the scrum half always the one to resource that breakdown and pass the ball from the base of the ruck?
No. No, it's a lot more dynamic. I'd say a big difference for scrum half though in sevens is that the scrum half is the one who's actually going to throw the line out, which in 15s is obviously the hooker who's doing that. So that's a big responsibility of the scrum half on the sevens field, which is different from 15s in that respect. But no, so your scrum half is gonna it's going to source it's going to be the source of putting the ball in for the scrums. But besides that, in terms of like breakdowns and rucks, it really usually ends up being whoever's closest has to be able to source that breakdown. So it's not like you can kind of wait for your scrum half to get across the field all the time because then they'd just be running back and forth. So it really is a little bit more dynamic than that.
Great, awesome. And the question that I really want to ask you is, what position do you typically play on this map here?
So I usually play center wing. So I would say like your scrum half, fly half. I just explained the scrum half a little bit, but your scrum half, fly half are really like your playmakers. And I think that is pretty similar to the 15s in that they're kind of classified in that playmaker role, but they're usually the ones who are like the best on the ball and have the best field vision and are the ones who are identifying space and just kind of responsible for making sure the ball kind of gets into those spaces. And then I get to play center and wing, which are kind of it's less important to be a distributor in those positions. Obviously at center you still have to be able to move the ball to the winger and you still have to be able to make those decisions, but oftentimes center and wing you also have to be really prepared to attack and to take defenders on one-on-one. So I kind of play on the edges and do a lot more of the carrying the ball, the running with the ball, than I would say the distributing that happens from those playmakers. Yeah.
Nice, as we saw in that video of you. And it was no mean feat. I mean, to play in the Kiwis, those girls grow up and they've played rugby their whole lives, and there you are in that video with a wee in and out, and then a big fin to the chest, and leaving one of the Kiwis in the dust there. I mean, that was pretty awesome to see. I remember when that was circulating around social media.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool moment for me. It was one of the first few times that I'd ever played against them, and I think that was the first time we beat them while I was on the team. And so it was a pretty special moment, I'd say. Definitely an adrenaline-filled moment.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing. And we'll get a little bit more into your experiences shortly. But before we do, we've got physiological demands. And obviously, this is one that's really important, particularly at the level you play at, because if you don't have this, you really don't have too much of a chance if you don't have a lot of this stuff. Isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, if we start at the top there, and there are probably some things that are non-negotiable, and obviously you need an aerobic capacity. And if we were to go into that a little bit, in a sevens tournament, how many games might you play throughout that tournament?
6 usually.
6 games in a tournament. So
6
you
games in
need
a weekend, yeah.
so you need to be, you need to have the aerobic base underneath you to be able to back it up and play, 6 games for 14 minutes each, essentially.
Right.
Yeah. And from this list here, Kristi, tell us a little bit about kind of the ones you think are most important, and you need those regardless of what position you play or who you are.
Yeah, well, I think, when I look at this list, aerobic capacity, as you said, is kind of a non-negotiable. But with that, I would put repeated sprint ability and repeated contact ability. When I think of sevens, it really is a game of constant movement. It's hard hitting, it's fast, and you kind of always have to be engaged. I think because in sevens, there's so few people on the field. Anytime that, you have a player who's being lazy or who's unengaged, that is an opportunity that the other team is going to exploit, because that is where the free space is going to be on the field. So I think those ones are kind of the non-negotiables. You have to have the capacity to play the 14 minutes, and at any time you have to be able to do sprint repeats, whether that's chasing somebody down, taking off of the ball, and contact repeats. I mean, I can't even say the number of times that I've made a tackle, gotten back up, and then I had to be the person to make the next tackle. And I think that's something that is really important in sevens, is just that ability to kind of, you have that aerobic base to kind of keep you going, but then the ability to kind of peak during those times is really important. And then, continuing on this list, acceleration, deceleration, top speed, strength and physicality, and agility, I would kind of call those super strengths. I think there are things that a lot of people have, especially on the sevens field, but I think to me, those all are kind of about ways to manipulate space on the field. We talk about it as when you're playing one up against a defender, there's 3 different things you can do. You can change your pace, you can change your direction, or you can change your angle of attack. And so those are all different ways to kind of manipulate the person in front of you and try to manipulate the space in front of you. And those are all different ways to do that. The ability to accelerate and decelerate in short spaces, the ability to hit top speed as fast as possible, is the difference between, you get one step by somebody, the difference between getting caught in 10 meters versus getting to run the next 70 to the try zone, is that ability to hit top speed fast. And then strength and physicality, everyone on the sevens field is responsible for everything. It's a very dynamic game. So, you have to be able to take contact, you have to be able to ruck for your teammates, and you have to be able to give contact just as well. So I think, and then agility goes along with all that, just the ability to kind of be light on your feet and read what's in front of you and adapt to changing pictures. I'd say those are definitely super strengths that kind of come in rugby sevens, and really are things that can separate some players from others. And then focus and decision making is also a big one. I think that's also, I do think that that's kind of a baseline, is that ability to make decisions and make decisions under fatigue, because it is a fatiguing game, and also make decisions at such fast speeds, because sevens is a game where everything is kind of constantly moving. So I think with decision making and with sevens is, you are constantly kind of looking for space, and those pictures are changing so fast. So the ability to make decisions and the ability to just kind of make split seconds decisions and to change that decision when you see something change, obviously, is really important. I think something that everyone on the field has to have a baseline of that ability to kind of read those pictures and make those decisions at speed and under fatigue.
Yeah, that was incredible. Really well explained. And that's why we get the professionals on to talk about it, not myself over here. So no, that was awesome. And I think to your point, the super strengths, as you called them, arguably in the US, we've got more athletes that have those because of the range of sports they've played. And I think that's probably contributed a bit to, the success that we're seeing right now in the sevens game. And obviously you guys won a gold medal in Glendale, and the men's have been ranked number one had been for quite a while. And that's probably in part due to the athletic ability that we do produce in the States. Would you agree with that? Or
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously because of the nature of rugby in the United States, because we don't have it when we're growing up, I think the best rugby players are the ones who have played kind of a diverse background of sports, because they've trained all these different muscles and they have trained all these different abilities in different ways. And so then I think once you get onto the rugby field, they kind of combine in a really nice way. At least I think that's kind of what happened with me.
yeah.
So I do think that cross-training background is really important and has really contributed to the success that the U.S. teams have seen in the last few years.
Yeah, awesome. And I think, you were talking about seeing pitches and decision making, and I'd imagine that soccer, there's probably no better sport for seeing space and seeing pitches and putting people into space. And I'm sure that we'll touch on it next week when we talk about the skills and developing those skills. But did that carry over quite well for you in terms of seeing the pitches and seeing space and moving pitches and whatnot?
I think soccer helped me the most, just in the sense that it is also a game that is constantly adapting. So the space is constantly changing. So I think just, seeing one thing 1 second and then being able to change your mind based on the picture changing in a second, and like that, I think that was really important. I think the pictures in rugby are definitely very different from the pictures in soccer. Also, I played as a forward in soccer, so the pictures, I wasn't somebody necessarily who was always kind of trying to read that best space. I was really manipulating my defenders one-on-one, which I think has come to be kind of my super strength in rugby as well. But there's definitely carryover just in that ability, just in that dynamic nature of the game and the constant movement and the constant changing of what's going on around you, and just recognizing that it's not just about what's happening where the ball is, but it's also what's happening off the ball. And I think that's a big carryover from soccer as well.
Yeah, awesome. And I think, our challenge at the Free Jacks and within New England, and we're very lucky we've got people like yourself helping us in our endeavour to I guess expose more people to the game early, so that now that these athletes know about the game earlier, they can go off and play these other sports as well, or for a few years, and then they could come back and then relearn the game of rugby and pick that up. And imagine what a force the States will be once we get to that point.
Yeah, I can't wait. I think about it a lot.
Yeah, really exciting. So we'll touch on that a lot over the next few weeks. Before we move on from this slide, Kristi, obviously you're based down in Chula Vista most of the year, full time. Tell us a little bit about what a typical training week would look like, and let's say in season.
So we're a full-time program, so we're training. Normally we're practicing Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesday is usually like our midweek recovery day. And then we're also lifting Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Our training is basically built to kind of maximize these physiological demands. So Monday morning, we usually have like a speed session where we're trying to hit that top speed, and we're working on our ability to get up to top speed quickly, and just working those muscles. So that's usually like our Monday mornings, usually like our high speeds, usually the fastest we'll run all week is in that Monday morning session. And then we'll have like a heavier lift that day, and that's usually along with meetings and stuff like that we have during the week. But from a physiological standpoint, that's Monday. Tuesday is usually our heaviest like load day, so it's usually the day we'll run the most meters, and that's the day we'll also focus on playing at game speed, and it'll be a lot of like that repeated sprint ability, that repeated contact ability, and our big heavy contact day. So Tuesday is usually our day where we're really working on like that fatigue aspect, and that making decisions under fatigue and playing at game pace or really faster than game pace, just kind of building our legs for those types of situations. And then we'll have Wednesdays off, which is usually a recovery day. And then we'll have Thursday, we'll do some more speed work. But then we'll also be doing a lot of game scenarios. So we'll work a lot from like live play from kickoffs or from scrums or from lineouts. But those are usually our extended interval days. So we'll usually play within those practices are usually like our amount of time that we're actually playing will be higher than it usually ever is in a game. Like we'll play 2 minutes on, which is kind of long for a set in rugby sevens. And like we'll just kind of work like that. So we're kind of working under that fatigue aspect as well. So Tuesday, Thursdays are kind of our big fatigue days. And then Friday is really more of our skill day. Like that'll be like the day where we work on some micro skills. It will be usually a lighter day in terms of the number of meters we're running. But then we'll usually have a nice little off-feet conditioning just to kind of build that aerobic capacity without putting our legs through it. So whether that's rowing, swimming, whether that's a circuit workout, biking, we'll just kind of have that kind of off-feet just as a way to keep building that aerobic base after we've put our legs kind of through the craziness of the week. And then they're nice enough to usually give us the weekends off to recover to do it again the next week.
Nice. I am knackered just hearing about that training week. But I guess that shows how crucial that weekly training periodization is, particularly with sevens, and some really cool things you're talking about there. Like training for longer periods of time than you're gonna reach in a game. And I imagine being in that environment for yourself, it probably put your ability to play the game on steroids. Just being in that environment where you're always hitting skills, you're always training those qualities we're talking about there, the physiological demands, and yeah, I'm sure that's been huge for your development.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I got kind of lucky because, by the time I got into the USA rugby system, I was still kind of, a blank slate, like a newborn baby. I was still kind of learning it from the ground up. So I got to learn all this, like a lot of my skills and everything from people who are the best in the world at it, which is like a really cool opportunity. And obviously, like, yeah, we wear monitors constantly, so they know, like, we wear heart rate monitors, we wear the GPS trackers, which I know you guys work with in 15s too. So they really are constantly tracking, like, our efforts, our meters. So they really are tailoring this so that we are like mathematically able to peak at the right times, which is it's a really cool way to train, and it obviously leads to good results because it's so science backed, which I think is an important part of how they train us out and how they know how far they can actually push us at moments, which is important too.
Yeah, I was thinking about you guys training and lifting heavy on a Monday afternoon, and then
I mean, heavy is different for us than I would say for you guys. I mean, by heavy, I just meant usually like our Monday lift is a little bit more leg based, and then we have Tuesday where we'll do kind of a little bit more of an upper body lift, but we'll be running a lot, so our legs will have been a little bit fatigued from the day before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Thursday is our Thursday lift is kind of just like a whole body kind of lift, but yeah. So by heavy, I meant just it's kind of more leg based, which I think of as heavier and harder because I feel it more when I'm out on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that you certainly do feel it in your legs that next day when you're strutting it out with your long on feet day.
Yeah.
Awesome, Kristi. So we'll head on to the last slide there, and it's just sort of about your story. And I guess we can start probably with the photo that's right in front of us there. If you can just tell us a little bit about what those medals around your neck represent.
So this is a picture from our tournament in Japan, Kickoffs. Actually the same tournament that you showed the clip of at the beginning, the first time we beat New Zealand. So this is us winning our, I think it was our third or bronze of the season that year. Might have actually only been our second, but yeah. So that was a big moment for us. It was the first time I think we'd beat New Zealand. I don't think ever, but I think in a long time, on the 7 circuit. So that was a big weekend for us. Yeah.
Awesome. And then if we were to fast forward from then until Glendale this year, it was the first gold medal? Tell me a little bit about that tournament there in Glendale.
So actually our first gold medal came at the end of the season that this photo is from. So it came in Biarritz the year before. So it was the last tournament of the season. It was the tournament we qualified for the Olympics in, and we played New Zealand again in the final there, and that was our first gold medal performance. So that was the first time that happened. So then fast forward 6 months from that, we have Glendale, which is the beginning of the 2019-2020 World Series. And it's the first time I've ever played on home soil. It's the first time I get to play in front of my family and friends. And that was the first time we ever won the home tournament. And so that, for us, that represented, we won in Biarritz, and that was cool. It's an amazing historic moment for us. We win that tournament. We cap off as second overall in the series, which is huge for us, in the highest finish we've ever had. And then we get to back it up with the first home tournament of the next series by winning again in Glendale. And that was a really cool moment, just because it just kind of, for us, it kind of felt like, if you do it once, it's, you did it once. It could be written off as a fluke, but when you back it up with another gold medal performance, it really just highlights that, like the USA team is here. We're here to play, and we're going to be competing for that top spot every tournament. So those were a cool back-to-back experience.
That's awesome. So that's so awesome. And what month did you say that was in, Kristi? Just out of curiosity.
The Glendale one?
The Glendale one, yeah.
So that was October of 2019.
October 2019, yeah. Awesome. I remember, I don't know when, I can't even think of when the Rugby World Cup was now in 2019, but I think we were maybe in preparation for the World Cup, or
I think you guys might have already been over there. So our tournament in Glendale was the first weekend of October, so I'm pretty sure the World Cup ran like the rest of the month, kind of, or like towards the end of the month.
And I remember the boys all watching it, or watching the replay. It might have been because of where we were, and it was just like amazing to see that you girls had gone and won it at home. So
it was a really special moment. I think for everyone. I mean, especially for me, that was, I had started playing for the USA team. October, so 10 months before that. But we have girls on the team who have been growing this program for the last 6 years, since before the last Olympics. So just kind of culminating in that moment where you win the tournament in front of your family and friends is just kind of showcases the progression that this program has gone through, and it's just kind of a nice cap on everyone's journeys in a different way. But it was a really special moment to do it at home in front of our family and friends, which when you play around the world, they don't always get to be there. So that was really special.
Yeah, awesome. And that's probably a good point, that people may now see, the shining lights, but there's been a whole lot of hard work go in previously to get, the States to this point. So yeah, credit to all those girls that have put in that work. And then 2020 was meant to be the year of the Olympics. It's been shifted to 21. Tell us a little bit about your aspirations and excitement and potentially attending the Olympics.
Oh, I mean, the Olympics is the dream, you know? I mean, I've been dreaming of being an Olympic athlete since I was a little kid. When I was younger, it was something I thought I was going to do through soccer. And that was a dream I kind of gave up a while ago. So I feel like I kind of got my second chance. And it was not something I was about to pass up at all. So, you know, getting the opportunity with rugby and, you know, being in this situation where we are qualified for the Olympics, so we know like Team USA is sending a rugby team, which is amazing. And it's an incredible opportunity. It's an incredible thing to be vying for, and it's just, you know, for all of us, you know, we're chasing down the dream. And that's really, you know, what it's all about is just, you know, we get to play a sport for a living. We get to have a lot of fun doing it. But at the end of the day, you know, we're all chasing down that Olympic dream. And that's a really special motivator, I think, for all of us. And so obviously the postponement this summer, it was definitely a tough hit. I think everyone was, you know, we were finally getting close to it. You could kind of feel the excitement building. But we like to think of it as now we have another year to get better. We've kind of gone through the mock Olympic prep, which we wouldn't have been able to do in any other situation. So now we get to go back and fix the things that we want to fix and just kind of really nail this preparation into next summer. So it's an exciting opportunity for us as a program. And, you know, that's how we're trying to frame it going forward.
Awesome. I guess for you too, you get another kind of 6, 8, 10 months of training under your belt of rugby under your belt too before you get to do it on the biggest stage in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it's, you know, it is kind of a blessing. You know, I get a whole nother year of rugby experience, which I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a little daunting thinking about going in to like potentially being on the Olympic roster with like a year and a half of international rugby under my belt. For me, it's a cool opportunity. You know, I get to work on all my skills. I get to get better at the game. I get to, you know, become a better rugby player and not just an athletic kid who can play rugby. So for me, that's a really exciting opportunity just to really become a better sevens player before hopefully making the world stage.
Yeah, awesome. Now that Kristi, that's brilliant. It's been amazing to kind of discuss your experiences and go over the game of sevens in our first installment of 4. So we've got 3 really cool episodes coming up where we're going to go more in depth into the game, talk about some strategy, the skills a little bit. But I mean, from my point of view, we're lucky enough at the Free Jacks where we train out of flight performance and fitness with obviously your fond S&C Jared there, and it's been awesome to kind of, you know, have a place in Boston where high performance rugby kind of operates out of. And I think, you know, our mission is very much to grow the game and both the men's and women's game, and do everything we can to create more stories like yours. So that's our mission at the Free Jacks and within New England Rugby, and we're stoked to have you on board to kind of join us in that mission and to lead from the forefront and be a real kind of inspiration and role model for all the girls, all the boys out there who want to follow in your steps. So cheers for jumping on board.
Yeah, of course. I'm really excited to be part of it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, signing out now, Free Jacks Nation. Thanks for tuning in for our first installment of our 7 series. And Kristi, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.